Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert, the narrator, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Confessions. Well, this episode of Confessions, I want to talk about the question, as a game master, how often do you allow your player characters' hunches to be wrong? What I mean is, when your players are trying to negotiate with an NPC or search for something, or try to figure out a particular plot point or what the bad guys are up to, or if there is a clue they have to solve, how often do you allow them to just be wrong? Now, I'm assuming the answer to this question is based on the game master and players' play styles that hopefully they have agreed on. I'm assuming if the game master and players have agreed on a more collaborative narrative style where everyone gets a say as to what's going on, I'm assuming that the game master almost never tells the players that their hunches are incorrect because they're collaborating and creating the world and or narrative. On the other hand, if the players and game master have decided on a style where the world has an objective reality. There are things that are true about the world. There will be times when the player characters are just wrong about their hunch. Let's talk about some of the pros and cons of these different approaches. Now, obviously, there are no cons to these approaches if everyone is on the same table. And at the end of the day, of course, that is best practices. When you sit down to the table to game, if what's happening at the table everyone agrees with, there are no cons. But if you are thinking to yourself which style would be right to you or some of the benefits of doing one style over the other, I'm going to go ahead and break those down for you. Now, the pros, obviously, of letting the players' hunches be correct is, of course, the game moves more quickly. If the players really don't have to work their way through particular clues or pointing out or figuring out particular plot points, the game will move a lot quicker. The PCs will always feel satisfied and there won't be any hurt feelings like you may have in settings or styles where the world has an objective reality and the player characters are being challenged. And also in a style where the players and game masters collaborate on what is true in the world, it should be really difficult for the players to feel railroaded. Those can be the benefits when you have sat down to the table and everyone has their mind made up to collaborate and create the world together. Now, what are some of the things you want to watch out for if the world has an objective reality and the players and GM have decided that they're not going to collaborate on creating the world? The world is real, and there are things that are true and are not true. This is something that GMs always struggle with. The idea of a campaign or session coming to a complete halt because the idea is that the player characters are going to be challenged, but if they have to solve or find a clue, they can't find it. That is one of the dangers that can come from the player and GM playing in a real world that the GM has created that has rules and laws and has some inescapable truths. The easiest way around that idea is to make sure that if the player characters are going to have to figure out clues or figure out an overall plot or negotiate for information that really will push the game forward, all of those scenarios should have multiple avenues of resolution. So if your world is going to have things that are true and are not true, sometimes your players are going to come across the things that are not true, which means that they're going to be halted where they are unless there are other avenues to move the plot forward. That is very important, that a game master running in a world that has an objective reality put into place or enact. The GM will really have to be careful that even when he or she and the other players have decided that the world has an objective reality and everyone is okay with the GM challenging the players and crafting sound narratives with a beginning, middle, or end is not the goal of the game, session, or campaign, the GM may want to make sure that he is still not stroking his ego by foiling the players. As I said, if your world, or if you're playing in the world that has an objective reality, but you don't insert multiple avenues for clues to be solved or NPCs to give information or plots to be figured out, you're going to run into roadblocks. Things could really get bogged down without those best practices. I have run into this situation before. I've told this story before while running Numenera. I like to run in a setting and a game and a world that has an objective reality. That means that there are things that are true about the world and there are things that are not true. I once ran an adventure in Numenera for my players, and the adventure clearly stated that one of the main antagonists would make a particular deal with the player characters, but would not waver from the particular of that deal. When the player characters did not like the deal and had to use one of those other avenues to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, a lot of the players in the game thought that their time was wasted. I personally believe that for verisimilitude's sake, your first offer or your first hunch about a clue or a plot does not always have to be the correct answer, as long as there are other avenues for the answer to be discovered that doesn't bog the game down. And I think that is only fair as long as the GM and the players have decided to play in that play style. So tell me in the description below, how often do you allow your players' hunches to be wrong, and how would you describe your play style? Are there GMs out there who play in a collaborative narrative style where both you and the players are creating the world together, but sometimes your players' hunches are wrong? Or do you have a style where you strictly adhere to an objective reality, but when a player gives you a hunch that is not true, do you just go with it? Let me know in the description below. Thanks for checking out this video. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you're watching this video. Thanks.